sustainability building बनाने के लिए we should use traditional techniques, or we should consume less AC, electricity, or the energies. So I would like to know your point. What does sustainability mean to you?
Okay, I would broad base the definition. Sustainability actually has to begin and end with the way of life. Every other thing in between are supplementing to the same. But step first, so that's about the lifestyle, the ways of life, our habits, our culture, our traditions. Now, this is where we are not trying to romanticize when we say that we can learn from traditional wisdom, which is what is my belief, is for the simple fact that, for two performance reasons, ideally three performance reasons, we could learn, understand, and interpret the lessons from traditional built form. First one being that they were pre electricity days. And despite all these props of the appliances and the gadgetry without electricity, if we were able to manage comfortably, we always admire when we go to the old palaces or havelis or whatnot, the kind of architecture and joy of that and comfort of that. So, without compromising on environmental comfort, if we were able to create the built form such that through built form, if we were able to get the kind of comfort, then can we not learn those principles that our dependence on artificial energy and such mechanized props are minimized? So that is one performance reason we have seen over centuries and decades of traditional architecture because they had no choice as there was no electricity. The second performance reason is that most of the vernacular architecture has come about for the place, from the place, for the people. So it was in response to the ways of life of the people. So if it was a hot place, then right from the daily routine, that hotter the place, they used to have afternoon naps, siesta routine, whether it is Mexico and Spain in outside context, or whether it is Saurashtra, Rajasthan in our Indian context. So rather than following the mechanical clock, they followed the body clock. Secondly, like Arabian Nights, it was very pleasant. As much hot it may have been through the day, it was pleasant in evening, and people used to follow outdoor activities and outdoor routine. Okay, even in Ahmedabad, people slept on the terraces, even till now. Then next is that not only such kind of management of this routine and work schedule, but also the attire. For example, there was a study done in Japan that if the senior executives were relieved of their tight tuxedo kind of a three-piece suit marketing dress, and if they were allowed to wear the informals, they would have felt the same level of comfort with couple of degree warmer AC temperature. So wrong dressing was the culprit to having to use extra energy and jack up the AC, as against from our coastal region. If we see that, and from any part of the world, if you see the local dressing pattern, then it is in response to the climate. So as I was saying, in coastal region there'll be more bare chested and they would have just the moon, etc., because it's a humid place. In a cold place, they use this idea of layering, so that as many layers depending on the changing climate you could have. So dressing is also responsible. So unsympathetic attire can also create discomfort, and then you have to resort to the mechanized means. Similarly, May afternoon, 2 o'clock, why do we have to work outdoors? So that was about the daily routine. Similarly, if we look at the diet practices, not only that it relies on the staple diet available geographically, agriculturally from the region, but it also is in consonance with the kind of temperate or the warm or the cold climate. So, colder the climate, we see more fatty needs, and therefore they might resort to the non-vegetarian options more or fatty options more versus warm and humid climate, and we go for more lighter rice based kind of palate. But one thing, that warmer the place, spicier the palate, so that when we perspire by evaporative cooling we get body comfort. So there are these core All I'm trying to say is that, like the no electricity, electrical or the environmental management with natural processes and built form, similarly, the cultural traditions, if we follow, because it has responded to the place and people, including the construction, we see that, earthquake prone Japan, and they build their light structures with change, I mean, partitions, all and whatnot. And that's what they understood over time. So they understood the vagaries of the weather and they tried to create built form in response to that. So if we learn that what has been practiced for ages and what has been kind of successful, in fact, even it has improved over a time. So it's not only just one time response, but it has been tested and perfected over time. So why not learn from that? So rather than reinventing alphabet from zero, we can pick up what has already been proven worth of and practice to further kind of take it up there. And third has to do with, aesthetic sustainability. Sustainability, I will put it even in many ways, that if something ugly, even it has for posterity come down to us, I don't think we admire and we want to keep it. So that is also something that this architecture has proven, that transcending time, it has continued to inspire awe even today. Most of our tourism is where? To many of these historic places. So these are the three performance reasons of its timeless aesthetics, socio-cultural appropriateness, and environmental sustainability through passive means and build form. These are the kind of lessons, if we learn from them, we could still adapt it and yet add whatever other technologies, conveniences, comforts that today brings to us. So
Definitely, sir.
it's grandmother's nostalgia, but it's a proper performance evaluation and taking that wisdom further.
Yes, definitely. So, like, I would like to know because today's generation is different. They call Gen Zs and Alpha, and their requirement and needs is different. So, I would like to know if we apply those traditional techniques or that traditional wisdom, so integrating into that traditional or the techniques into the modern design requirement in the projects. So, what are the challenges because you work into that area? So, what are the challenges you faced, and how do you integrate into that modern design requirement?
Not full agreements to some of the statements, but yet I'll take it up from there and respond accordingly. First of all, when we say culture, what is culture? Or, okay, let's say what is the built form a resultant of? Culture, climate, and construction.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, climate, even if we consider the climate change, has become more severe than little before. And a lot of, therefore, these solutions are, in fact, even more valid today than ever before.
Yes.
Talk of culture, culture may change, but change very slowly. But what we think today is a cultural change, I do not see that as a real rapid opposition or change, in the sense that the kind of value system is no longer valid. In fact, many in account, those value system are far more valid, and it has again been proven thanks to the corona. I always say that, we should refer to history and the time frame not by BC, before Christ, and AD, but before Corona and after Corona, BC and AC. The reason is that it did teach us a lot of those values which we were debating, and it actually settled that debate forever. For example, we understood that what was the value of the bond between human to human versus, we got bored with all technological tools were useful as a tool, but it did not substitute the human to human personal interaction. We broke curfews to go and meet someone, or we always wanted to step out. Thanks to window, that was the other relationship we understood, human to nature, that just being able to look out of the window, we were able to spend time all through the day despite not being allowed to step out. So it still gave us the kind of count of the days, and you could enjoy the day on its own variable, sunlight to birds to flowering to whatever. So, if we base ourselves on these two fundamentals, human to human symbiosis and human to nature symbiosis, I don't think our responses have changed. In fact, today, with more vengeance, we try to go out to be with nature. You know, so cultural changes are misconstrued to be that of the devices and the kind of tools, introduction. So that it also told us that what was the value of multiple use of space. Yeah. It told us, rather than being the slave of a wristwatch, knowing the body clock and you could adjust till 24 hours, that in fact you felt freedom about it, not working, but working at your own pace and hours, even more work. We worked 9 hours, but I think we enjoyed in between have if we wanted to play card and sort of work little later for the office and things like that. So we understood the true kind of a freedom that came by being yourself and being human rather than being the slave of the third thing. When during Corona, when these undue systems were out of the place, made be cars, made be certain other kind of polluting things, we saw, including the noise pollution, we saw that nature could correct itself, because
Yes.
we saw the visibility in Delhi, which always has been a question mark. Nobody found answers, but it already told us what was the culprit. We saw that many wild animals from jungle came to concrete, neighborhoods, because again that distinction got blurred. So in fact, it gave us hope that we always felt that we are too many on this planet, but we kind of now can't reverse it. But the corona showed that it can be done. But coming back to, therefore, these were more fundamental human strategies. It was not the kind of technology or the mechanical advancements or things like that. So I think being human, as human, we have not changed as much. We like to think that hamara jamana badal gaya, but as many things that we continue through our upbringing, through our cultural connotation, through our, which are latently part of us. And what changes are more physical and technological in terms of the dependence on the tools, rather than to say and fool ourselves that as human species we have changed that much. And as I said, that for climate reasons, for the kind of severity reasons, and for the kind of confidence and hope that corona and that time's lifestyle that got to us, we have learned with evidences the kind of path that we should be taking, and somehow that path leads us to the way that always, as a planet, I'm not saying when I say culture it's just India or this or that. I think as human species, the way we interacted with place, people, and planet is something what holds it. Technologies are great tools. So, for example, yes, Zoom, way we are communicating right now, to the way we were able to talk to people, but that, given a choice, would not substitute. It can offset the kind of non-availability of the other, but it did not totally kind of substitute it. So by breaking curfew, went out to meet someone in person. It in fact reinforced some of these values as human being, as a species, what we always had in latently as part of us. So to say that today's generation, the culture has changed, what way has it changed? For example, with 60 channels we get bored, but meeting someone, meeting, if maybe friend, if not a grandfather. So I think a lot of those fundamentals haven't changed. So the kind of way that we need to think about our build form, none of those premises have been challenged yet. Yes, tools in fact can be a convenience, but they are not opposition to thing. And trust me, I mean, it's not me as Yatin what anybody needs to believe in, but our generation has changed, seen technological change which your generation just not have even imagined. You know, we have had a kind of a no telephone to the booking phone via an operator to two pieces mouthpiece and the kind of earphone different to rotary to a big kind of a messenger pager as used to be called to the kind of a phone which was this large by battery operated to actually mobile phone, not this mobile, but cordless phones to mobile, and now the 17th generation of and in each field. So I'm saying the same with computer, from crocodile to computer, no software and this to that. So there's no aversion to technology. On the contrary, we have adapted technology far more than today's generation has no idea how that rotary phone works. Yeah. So I think it needs to be seen that basically as human, how do we kind of respond to the vagaries of weather, to the kind of appropriateness of interactivity or bond with the fellow human being, to the kind of yes, technology may have changed and that can easily be adapted. I mean, we don't have to light a kerosene bulb in the name of tradition, but at the same time, if we could do without much of electricity, even if it's a five-star, five rated kind of an equipment, why do we need to need it? The first thing first, as I said.
So I like to know, like India has a millions of people living in slums and often struggling with the basic needs like ventilation lights. Some of the houses don't have a proper even line ventilation. Even students don't have a space to study. Like they don't have a natural light right to there. And one of your project, I have studied about that urban slum rehabilitation that involved translucent dormers to get the natural light into the home, and that is saving like you said one of our talk that saved around 300 rupees electricity monthly, and the wages has been increased by 1500. So sir, what are the more strategies that we can inculcate into this hopes so that the problems can be solved at the mass level and many people can get benefit of that?
Right. So, any place, I'm broad basing this and we'll come down to the project. But before that, the whole issue of housing, if you go by the typical land use, two-third of the land use is about housing and this. So actually, housing creates the urban form, urban structure, city's image and livability. And then if we understand that what needs to be done for that, that's number one. So even something, even slightest difference made to that would multiply, not only in terms of identity, image, and character of the place, but also in terms of energy needs, etc., etc. Second thing, now, if you go by that, what is a slum? Yes, it's not to romanticize. There are issues. But what are the issues? It's deficit in terms of its infrastructure, services, provision, inadequacy, or squalidness or non competence of that. So unduly, we are throwing baby with the basket. Let me tell you, there have been enough studies. We started in 60s by or first 47 onward euphoria that hamara jamana abhi now we are independent, sab kuch badal denge, and we would start giving everybody a big house. And we realized there were no resources and there were mismatches. So then we started reducing the definition from 80 square meter house to now 16 square meter or 23 square meter likewise.
Yeah.
Secondly, we realized that fully built houses, by removing what they had done, we created social mismatches. People went back to their original shacks, etc., which means it was not about the physical built environment, the pakkaness of it, the concreteness of it, but it was more about appropriateness of that to their ways of life, to their living, pattern. And that is where we need to understand the strategies. So, for example, when at the time of that Aranya locus housing, where slum people were to be housed in it was an idea of a site and services. So rather than building the whole house, you kind of give them the land and services, which on their own they cannot do. But this is something with government's help can be provided. But even in a slum, they have on their own resources without getting any help from the public sector or anybody, created their own housing. So if we split this resource base, that let people do their homes and let government come in to give them land and infrastructure. So then they can have that canvas stretched for a wider number of people because deficit is very high. But what it also does is that it makes it socio-culturally appropriate because people have created their own environment as per their needs and aspirations and with minimum resource. So, in that resource that was with them, what they would have prioritized to have is something that they have invested or spent in. So, we can understand what are their needs and priorities. Okay, better from there. And third, that if we understand their living pattern, their socializing, their neighborhood bond, that they use more outdoor space than the room space and all, our design would be appropriately channeled through that. Now, in that light, Aranya could show that path, that learning from the slums and giving open space, movement network, infrastructure, it bettered than the original city, and yet with cross subsidy by having other group, larger group, economic group over there from market price, it could be subsidized. Now coming to already created settlement and the kind of intervention. So first point was that rather than demolishing, putting them somewhere where there are other social, economic, employment infrastructure, physical infrastructure not being there, they are not able to manage, not find employment, and they come back. So in situ upgrading is a very cost effective, socially relevant idea. And why? Because they have created their own environment as they would have liked and again perfected over time. Now, in that, what is not available? So, microsurgery, create open spaces larger than what they are. If they're single story, the moment you allow them to make 2 story or even up to 4 story walk up, no mechanized services, it releases a lot of open land. So it would have not a bad environment, but it would have decent environment in the same pattern rather than making gridiron very formal pattern and assume that it would work for others. It can grow with the kind of, like Patrick Geddes' idea of selective surgery. Now, in that light, what we had done for this project, which was for the NGO Seva, and their kind of members which were living in industrial slum, how do we bring about natural light and ventilation in a deep long house to save the space that they would have built with 3 sides shared with the neighbor? So there is no light and ventilation in the rear rooms, because only front has that fenestration possibility. And as a result, and it's all with the sort of for economic reason, for ease reason, all the corrugated metal sheet roof. So it sort of gets oven hot. Okay. So we asked to, think about some strategies and we came up with couple of strategies of which one that has been implemented in number of places is what is called Ujasiya. So it's a translucent dormer with the same corrugated thing in a kind of a fiberglass or so. And in that also we have used the vegetal material for, kind of a reinforcement of that, etc. So feels a little natural and can substitute a little bit of a other glass wool sort of a material. And it can be done locally as a kind of cottage industry within the settlement. So it was put in and more than several hundred homes it was installed, and with its success, it was also replicated in, we were told, Madhya Pradesh, Bhopal, and other cities as well. Now, what was done there that because of the dormer in the roof, because sides you could not address, so from roof now is a dormer. See, earlier we had a PET bottle put in, so it also glows without anything because of the internal reflection. Nobody gives, and it could substitute 60-watt bulb, but of course it would not have ventilation. So then was a better choice because it would have hot air escaping out of that hole of the dormer triangle, and natural light inside during daytime. Many things was monitored as positively affecting them over 1 year. It was scientifically recorded then and now. for as many possible houses, about findings that were very, very encouraging. Simple installation within their cost limit that they could afford, and monthly installment also was provided. So what savings they did by electricity bill is something that went in the installment, and they could get it in no time, within a year or two. So the recorded finding was a minimum of 250 to 300 rupee monthly electricity bill saving, because in the afternoon they did not have to burn electricity for lighting, and sometime even in certain weather fan, which otherwise they could not live without. Second thing that it was that because of that, indoor economic activity, the commercial activity, the production activity that they were involved with, home-based production, could now go on for longer hours with less eye stress, etc., because light was adequate, comfort was there. So the minimum of 1500 rupee increase in the monthly production economic gain. Okay, because they could now do it for better and longer hours. Third, their health index improved. Fourth, now kids had no excuse but to sit at home and do their homework because there was enough daylight, etc. And they actually took it to the social kind of well-being. We had a meeting of all the kind of participants, meaning these members, and couple of things that they said was even beyond us, our imagination. They said that we will get our daughters married to the houses which has Ujasiya, kind of a thing that they associated to something like that. So it was a pro bono, just a small installation, kind of a design intervention, but it could change the quality of life both for the people, place, and planet. So I strongly believe that design can make a difference, but you have to think that ultimately what it does to the quality of life of both people and planet. So that was that experiment. And if you do that, then no longer these houses are suffering or compromising. So you don't have to rebuild the whole thing. So likewise, there are n number of solutions for open spaces, but slight change in typology, just in situ upgrading, and you transform the slum. And one last statistics about it, it's an eye opener. Studies have shown that even Mumbai, which we say is an island and highly dense, and where do you have place and luxury to allow for Dharavi kind of a slum, etc. But if you know all the slums put together, it is so said that Mumbai is 50 to 55%, half of Mumbai population live in slum. But all the land area occupied by the slum is only 8 to 10%. So if 50% of Mumbai lives in 10% of land, do we want to pry on that land? Or we need to wonder that remaining 90, I mean 10%, another 50% are using 90% of the land. So I think sometimes, and therefore the whole mindset that slum is not a burden, in many ways it is solution. Government is not to the people, and this is a self-realized kind of a solution. They are a working force that come in handy, because in India, many services are provided by the informal system, whether it's the hawking or whether it's labor or whether it's any other such services, is all provided by parallel system, and that's what is making it work, because formal systems cannot stretch thin. So that's why if you accommodate them in your planning and consider as a resource, without they having to compromise or without us romanticizing, but if you know where the issue is, you are able to direct that and make a huge difference at a very kind of available resource base.
So one is that if we have such efficient solutions in place, what is the roadblock in terms of scaling them in cities like Delhi? Because personally, in areas that I go by or live in, there are such developments. So I always assume, like, what is the roadblock in terms of
Right. I mean, often very logical things. You think bribing someone has helped anyone. Your generation would have been a more victim of that. And still, when it comes to that, when it's a chalan, we go and we say, ke 500 leke khatam kar do, kind of a thing. So sometimes, unfortunately, we haven't taken it seriously into our policies. Because I'm saying bottom up, there have been efforts, top down, it needs to come. So if we have, first of all the compilation of various researches, let policy be based on that, and for each region, each place have a specific kind of policies. And this one, currently there have been another model for this, that rather than removing from there, but that model involves a little bit of demolition. It says that most of slums in India are in a very priced kind of a location, and very expensive real estate value places, locations like Mumbai. Dharavi is right central sort of a pocket, and very large pocket. So what has been there kind of found workable is that in the private sector, developer can get involved. Right now, it's a single or double story structure. If you allow it to go 4 story, you can accommodate in half or two-third of the land, same people plus more, with better amenities, open spaces, wider roads in the same location. So location logic is not flouted, and the remaining one-third land at a market price can be developed for the affording group, with even commerce on the periphery and all, and that will cross subsidize. They need
Yeah.
to provide other kind of housing for the poor. So poor don't have to bear the brunt, and they still in the same place gets a better neighborhood with other enhanced facilities. Socially it wasn't a problem. So this is something, as I said, was also part of that Aranya project, and likewise others then, that you had cross subsidy. So first it did not have a stigma that this is poor's basti. It was all mixed development, and the market value of the plots given for the higher income group, could that profit be plowed back for the development of infrastructure for which people don't have to pay. Okay, so they could still enjoy the same facility. But so this is how all these can be redone. But what we do, we just blanket it out, and we put 14-story, and now even 25, 40-story vertical neighborhoods, which as lifestyle, the group may not be able to, successfully operate. Neither this would all be anti-gravity, and therefore dependent on more and more electricity and mechanical means, which whether they can sustain and operate over longer time is always a question mark. And their own lifestyle, where things come out on street and open spaces, or even for economic sustenance, are all getting curtailed. So understanding right lifestyle and building around that is a less wasteful and more effective strategy. So I think it needs to be understood where the pinching lies, because even today, we've been removing all hawkers from all roads. Now, hawker is providing what you need, at what place, at what time, at what price, and in that season,
Yeah.
is you call encroachment, as against the same place on next to the road in the footpath. If I put my car and pay 20 rupees for an hour, as if I can own that 15 square meter of land by paying 20 rupees of a prime land, and makes it ugly or non-interfaceable. So we have not understood what we call encroachment, where was legally allow. So I think it needs to change the mindset, that policies have to be more people centric and realistic, and there's no charity. It is actually helping the cause, which is what, and why I'm saying the authorities or government, because their mandate is more about welfare rather than profit and economic gain. So, and that doesn't mean that it has to drain. There's always a crop subsidy. Where does taxes get applied? Where does the other aspects get applied? Look at this, that if I have a farmhouse somewhere far off, do I make a road access till that point? No. Over time, government would have had extended the road network. Then buses would come. Then telephone, my light and drainage would come. But if the same thing is to be provided in a slum, we said that these are all loaded on the free kind of services, this, that, We don't think from the base perspective, unfortunately. And we need more deeper research to then base our kind of policies on that. So, with goodwill and good kind of policies, I'm sure this can easily be transferred. Easy is a relative word, but I think it can be done. So, to start with, ke to hota nahi hai, those are all wrong mental blocks.
Yeah.
So talking about your project, like all of your projects are very inspirational, but two of them that I find interesting, that Mano Sadhna Activity Center and Gandhi Logo. So sir, I would like to know ki what are the challenges that you faced while doing this project. So can we talk about that?
Okay. See, first of all, every project has its own challenges, but constraints are to be taken as the kind of a contextual demand, and we need to design around that. It's like doctor cannot expect a simple case to come in, but if there are more complication, and still he has to find an answer to cure that. So I think if we go with the prefixed idea, there are more impediments that, oh, I always wanted to do a round thing, but this plot doesn't allow me to do that. But if we go by what has been given, it's like, I don't think doctor gets it with, into the cabin with any prefixed idea. He looks at the patient and then he finds the right solution for that. So I think we go with that mindset. There are lesser, what we call constraints, okay, or impediments. But yes, the usual ones, one always believe that if what would the client be concerned about? That he wants his economic framework not to be flouted. He wants the performance, may it be functional ease or it may be a structural kind of assurance. And third, aesthetics. So within this parameter, if you satisfy that, anything else he probably may not get too concerned about. Okay.
Right.
So there is still that room which is what you explore if you wish to try something out, etc. Okay. So for example, if you say, oh, build form control, yes, there are some build form control that needs reloc change and all that. But still, if they are there for certain intent, and within that, if you think from the beginning you're play filled, it's like rules of the game. I cannot hit the way I like in a cricket. If I get caught, I'm out. So you always play as per the rules of the game. Then we cannot say, oh, ye fielder yahan nahi hota, so it would have been nice. But no, that's a captain's choice and where he puts it. So likewise, playing by the context. So designing that evolves from both the constraint and opportunity of the context, and context in terms of, again, program, the users or the people, as well as the place and planet, so environment and the local conditions. So when you respond and be responsive to the context, I think your answer is to derive from there. So there less of these challenges or the word of constraints come in play. Now, talking of Manav Sadhna, that first of all, it's one of the largest quarter settlement, and in which the activity center by an NGO was to be put. So economic was understood to be the challenge in terms of the parameter. We had also at that point in time taken up about 3-year long deep research into the waste imperative, what happens in urban sectors of India and Gujarat, about the when from where we throw things and different sets of waste to what happens to it in terms of n number of in between cycle processes to where it eventually lands. And we even did specific studies from squatter settlements and many other contexts. That first and study, we learned few lessons about what kind of domestic or municipal waste. For example, Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation at that time daily used to produce 2,600 metric ton of waste. Now it has increased to 3,200 metric ton of waste per day. And what used to be done, it had begun dumping it at a place called Pirana, the site, dump fill site, and over these 15 or years, it became 80 feet tall mound of kachra, of the waste. Kind of reason to think that can we not turn some of these into a potential building component? Now, we didn't want to put everything as a building component. That's where our research told us that some of the things were not that effectively handled even by transforming it into something else. For example, if you say plastic PET bottle, thousands of that come out after the event, and nobody gives you 5 paisa per bottle. And there used to be a way of giving electricity and then kind of, burning it. So it meant power, energy. It meant polluting gases that got out, and flue gases. And what came out was a black lugdi like this. And from there, again, if I had to mold it into another kind of form, I had to apply the same energy, same kind of toxic gases, and something will come out. So we said that while these things get done, but I think is there not a smarter and effective way for building related purposes? So just that's where we thought that, water bottle, that PET bottle, plastic one, gets thrown. Even the slum in which we operated, one of the most economic activity was rag picking. So early morning, 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock, women folk, young girls and the ladies, used to go around, pick up the rag, pick up the waste, and sell it within the settlement to the kind of a first merchant who would kind of sell it to the wholesaler who would further compact and pack it, sort it, and then he would give it to respective places for further processes. So we found that this is their primary occupation. So it was contextually very relevant. They used to get material, such waste material there itself. But by changing these hands, what they were getting was not as much as what by transforming them into some product, effective product, could be done. So we targeted on cottage based production system that it can be more or less be done by themselves or at the most with some NGO help. So continuing on that single example of a PET bottle, what we found was that, with the form, the serration and the cylindrical kind of a shape, 1 liter bottle, even if you squeeze, it won't break. So it
Yes.
had that form engineering, so to say, which gave it a strength. So we said, what if water if we fill it with the inert material? So actually, the old widows and women of the settlement were employed to, with a thumb pressure, put inert material, soil, sometime, inert material from the processed dumpfill waste, etc. By thumb pressure, fill it into the bottle and close the lid, and that turned out to be 2.5 rupee equivalent of a brick, which could be used as a brick in the wall. So now what happened? We were able to not dump the plastic and create a pollution. It got transformed by giving employment to the old widows and ladies. And third, it became cheaper than the conventional option with the same performance for at least being a partition wall, not a load bearing wall. Okay. So this is how we came up with range of walling options, range of flooring options, range of roofing options, range of fenestrations, where the so-called waste with little transformation can effectively be used at cheaper or equal price than what they were buying it from second-hand market and material bank, so that they don't pay more for the new idea or this better idea. It has to be aesthetically pleasing and it has to be as much or better performing. So as a result, such experiments were done. We had got the test results from the lab. So it was not just romantic thought. It was proven that this has this strength, this has no organic matter or bioactivity, etc. And likewise, just as a collage, when we did this activity center, we kind of started putting in some of these as demonstrative values so that people can pick up, somebody else can pick up. So, for example, we had 6 or 8 range of walling options. So, starting with the dump site waste with a little binder could be turned into a soil block which was as strong. Then fly ash from the thermal power station, which was in huge quantity as a waste, not knowing what to do. And we, with some binders, 5% cement, etc., it became more stronger and 50% cheaper brick. And even till now, it was always an exposed brick construction, not letting the moisture even permeate inside. So stronger and cheaper, and converting the waste into a building component. Then we use the glass bottles on the western side, and in fact even as a jali, because southwest you can get the breeze but bad for sun, so sun can be harnessed. No overhang would cut down western globe, but you can turn it by this tainted glass. So likewise glass bottle wall, which was just thrown and it was crushed and taken to Uttar Pradesh for foundries, etc. Then plastic bottle wall, as I mentioned. Then wooden crate. Wood is very expensive, but crate wood being brittle, it's only used for burning the fuel wood or whatever. As against, we got the local mason, local carpenter to turn it into a kind of a grid support, and then it breaks because you hammer it, you chip it. But like glass, we don't hammer or chip, we make the beading screwed. So same way we use this paneling and it become a beautiful wooden panel as a walling partition. Okay. So likewise, there were n number of kind of solutions tried for that. Then door windows, we got second hand material like grill and scrap and all, to turn it into a kind of a metal casement window, or same crate wood shutters, or even we tried this paneling through either the digital ways. So our CDs were put as a paneling to the oil tin container opened up to become a paneling. They become louvers, like a blade, glass would break and get stolen. So they become the louver blades. With punctures, they became ventilators. So again, the GI oil tin container opened up to do all that, So again, the fenestration, all these components, roof, below neutral zone. So that idea of filler slab, you can put it with any inert material. So whether it was a mitti ka diya, would give you insulation and reduces the concrete, to even token digital waste like keyboard or things like that, put as a filler slab material, which you don't need plaster even, to gas. I mean, this both uh, kind of bottles, glass bottles, or the plastic bottles, or brick, and likewise. So filler slab idea for that. Floor finishes, which were second-hand materials. Some we created out of the combination of waste, uh, and some we just use those broken houses or constructed component where you have to pay money to offload that. We brought that scrap and then shipped it in a local kind of way to put it back as a flooring, etc. So in fact, it went into 4 phases of growth and development with extension, and in each we went on adding a new palette of waste, etc. So whether it was a rack sandwich paneling for FRP, or a kind of these packaging material wrappers, and there to substitute glass wool as a reinforcement in FRP. So it went on. For each, we took upon for ourselves an additional challenge that, okay, the palette that was already used previously, can't we not try something else beyond? And some, so even we came with electronic waste in some ways, to the metal scrap and building material waste, to second hand material market, and then value adding that to the various raw material and taking it from that waste. So each phase we went on adding that recycled product palette, and each phase demonstrated application of that. And the little bit of fulfillment of that was that, of course, it was done within the economic time, frame, but some of the poorest of the poor neighbors of the sort of neighborhood on their own implemented the idea of oil tin container wall, and they in fact improved it by putting the template of gods and goddesses and spray painting them. So they got the kind of a religious icon walls. So they looked also nice. It connected to the cultural and religious connotations, etc. To many architects also, noted architect from the city also applied it, to some of their similar projects or applications. And lots of students came there to visit, to understand. And so it could change the mindset. It could tell that somebody's waste can be somebody's resource. So, and as I said, that it went on for extending over 6 years, and each time a new palette. So even it was a resistance that was met with in the very first phase, that the owner or the trust, the NGO thought that don't make us guinea pig. And that's where we got all these trays done. Their economic was not flouted. And then they also prided in the thing. People came to see it, it got published, and they thought that this was something good that they had done. And therefore, they allowed us, they trusted us to continue it for 4 other extensions, so to say. So that was how that project was conceived, that there was contextual response about who the people were, what the activity was. Even the center was multiply used over time, that in the morning it was a school with classes, etc. Afternoon, post school hours till late evening, it became a education, literacy for digital literacy for the young women. So it became a continuing education and skill based education to improve their employability. So they got additional kind of strength and skill to be able to be employed in today's world. So that also gave them a better life possibility with digital literacy. And in the evening, it would become a social place, and the center became the sort of settlement city activity center, where whether it was a medical checkup camp, or whether it was some social gathering, or whether, you know all that could be happening there. So it was indeed a large activity center, which was in mental notion owned by every person of the neighborhood. I have seen and witnessed and documented every religion festival, whether it's Christmas or Navratri, being celebrated with highest fervor in this place and attended by the whole community that can fit in there. And then even within the center, I mean, settlement, we had multiple 4, 5 centers come up, women's center and likewise. So it responded. So the principles were contextual response, of course, climatic response by understanding natural ventilation. It used various secondary material coming out of its first use and putting it with structurally sort of stable, certified, and environmentally healthy way. And it created a true design, a space where multiple activities can happen. So all these kind of ways, domestic and some semi-industrial like fly ash, etc. And we could demonstrate in that project that economic may not be a constraint. Some of these challenges can be taken up by each profession in their particular way, and by understanding even the raw material in its own characteristics. So as I said, plastic we could have done like the burning and doing something, it's recycling, but you're not really getting much out of it. Versus here, each bottle became 2 rupee equivalent of a resource rather than a polluting waste, etc. So that was the concept, and that was the kind of idea that not polluting and therefore reducing waste being thrown and adding to the pollution. So environmental advantage, getting that material converted into building product so that they can improve their built environment better. So that was the built environment advantage. And in the process, value addition, the local employment can be sought in, and that can improve economically their bit. So all these three can be integrated and be satisfied by that initiative. So that was Manav Sadhna, the recycled waste component demonstrated in an activity center. And talking about the post-earthquake rehabilitation, although we worked on 18 entire villages rehabilitation, but what you asked for was one of the first and one of the 18 villages. We used the same approach, but again, contextually, maybe different material, therefore maybe different kind of technique. But approach was exactly the same. In fact, ninth day after the earthquake, we were there. First, it was to build a rapport, and we figured out on our next visit on 16th day that most interior village was affected and very close to the epicenter, and they needed or they could do better with the help. So we went into the border of India and Pakistan, Khavda region, and it was called Ludia before. Then after transformation, it's called Gandhi Nugam because the Gandhian NGO and got involved into this. So what was there? We found that they used to traditionally do earth bhungas. So local mud architecture, circular in form with a conical thatch roof. So about 14 feet dia and thick wall with small opening. And on a mud plinth, they would have two or three of these, which would be one dwelling. And we found that despite severe most earthquake that has taken place there, these earth constructions stood unscathed. While in a recent time, they themselves would have created stone and concrete buildings, and that gave way. They shattered to the ground. So we tried to understand that what was the scientific reason why it withstood. The evidence is right in front, but we tried to analyze what was the kind of you know real reason. So we're not just imitating form, and we analyzed and we found sub 7 reasons, from its low slenderness ratio to homogeneity of material to continuity of form as circular to balancing conical roof over it, to small aperture not to make too weak, strengthening of those aperture with a wooden jamb, and n number of these logical principles ensured that they withstood such a severe earthquake. And this was environmentally, meaning in terms of extreme heat of the desert, where outside temperature can go as high as 52, 54. I think here they were able to, with a fan, even in extreme summer, find very comfortable environment. And there was a huge insulation from outside in, etc. So we thought that it was local material. This is the know-how they know how to do it with. So they don't have to depend on some mason eventually to repair if something goes wrong, etc. They were known to do it on their own. So this is where local material was possible, local know-how was available, and their created homes were even resisting against climate and the kind of vagary as disaster of this sort. Yet it was still close to their lifestyle and culture, the way they used to use those spaces. So the philosophy we adopted, and we adopted for all 18 villages similar, that one, it would be a participatory process. We're doing it for them. Overnight system may have been disrupted. So we can't just come and say that this is now your village, this is your place, this is your house. It has evolved over thing and on their own initiative, with even the neighborly bond created accordingly. Okay. So we actually sat down on every village in the settlement, talked to them, documented from the debris the kind of plans of the settlement which are never available with any authority, and then talk to them about the kind of amenities they might need, about the kind of things that their houses have to be importantly retained for, and what are the new things that can come in. So now there was an opportunity. So idea was to continue the traditionally bound kind of ethos of that neighborhood and build form, but at the same time got a chance to add newer versions of technology or conveniences, etc. So combination of that. So we work for all 18 villages in a similar way, but describing the process for Gandhi Nugam that you asked, that as I said, that these mud houses had withstood. But what happened was that this was not with any government initiative. So it was all with, yes. So this was one of the very first project to realize, technically second, but in 2.5 months' time, where two communities, the Muslims and the Harijan, bartered the land.
Okay.
The Muslim had land closer to road, which the Harijans thought was a better place for them to settle, and they renunciated their neighborhood area for the growth and adaptation of the Muslim community. So it was an absolute barter of land without any friction, with mutual understanding. So now we did it on a newer site, very close to theirs, but we could start with actually understanding that that site had a small depression. And in fact, that is how site was selected even, that if we are able to dredge that little more, you know, we can actually salvage the local material from here. And that would be handy to create mud blocks, sun-dried mud blocks that they are used to create the construction out of. And from where we would dredge would become a local depression, and that would serve as a lake with little rainfall in the desert. It's mind to desert. Drought is the norm, but it will create a talab, it will create a pond by local geographic depression.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is how we said we'll use it with local materials right from the site. And they know how to do it the best for them, and it has performed. So we continue to do with that. Okay. In fact, when we people said we want Sisoti housing and concrete apartments, Sisoti means society housing.
That's it.
And yeah, but then we sat with them, we gave them a lot of debate and arguments and understanding, and then they understood that their house form is better and likewise, and they accepted that. But only 20 poorest family accepted that to begin with. But then once it was in the process, they saw the result, they saw how it was done transparently. NGO did very beautiful job of it. And eventually it went on to, by request, to 455 houses in the same place, meaning 2, 3 vases. Otherwise, there were 17 other villages. That is a different edit story. So the point is that it could bring the confidence in them. So now what was done, that we went there as even architect, as a part of the NGO's team, you know. So Manav Sadhna was the team then, and we went with the sponsor as the NGO who got some donation, or they decided to put. They also came with their social kind of engineering team. So they stayed with them to say that, to bathe the children, so they are not getting, teach them when schools were shut. So they don't stand in a queue to beg or go into the wrong habit. So they manage that part. And then what we started doing, that look at the debris, talk to the people, and we created one interactive thermocol plotting model, that we said that, look, how about your village is like geometry and this to come like this. To us, it looked organic, this, that, and we understood something. We presented it to the whole village there because something to react to. It was a starter. So that they said and said, "Ki, sir, but we have social taboos. We don't face waste, and we prefer west instead of south. Sorry, we don't say face south. We prefer west instead. Then we have 5 brothers and would like to share a compound with. I have this kind of a job and I need this sort of a thing, etc." So we therefore give an interactive kit. We were there, we made a scaled kind of a plot as available by the, actually better than the government norm, as it would have been specified for the minimum plot. It was much more than the minimum plot. And we kind of allowed them to place themselves to kind of come up with the community layout. Now, of course, it was little primitive. So we try to at least understand the DNA of what they were proposing. So, for example, if their proposal was a linear street, then we said, but in between, if we do small clusters, if we do some open spaces so that your daughter's wedding can be done there, they believed in a particular faith. And what about the shrine put in there? And they said, yes, this makes a lot of sense. And therefore, we could write there, we kind of configure that in a particular way, which once they approved on the kit and the plan, we took that to the actual site and oriented, because then they would understand at least the orientation and situation, that हाँ road idhar hai, ye idhar hai, pachham barobar hai, west is fine. And then yet they would not understand the scale. So they won't understand what is 400 square meters. Is it not small? And what? It was 1.5 times the largest plot. But break out of that apprehension. So we pegged one plot to say, this is the outline you would get. And when they saw it, is it so much? That's more than enough. So that meant comprehension of what was happening and acceptance of what was happening. So as a result, they could, before we came with the engineers to mark actually scientifically the whole plot as drawn, then with the drawing board, kind of perfecting or rectifying what was sketched out in the model, they had already started shifting their stuff to respective plot. So, but it meant their comprehension of who was where, etc. They may have put it a little crudely, but it was not. So that was our positive kind of a beginning, that they not only comprehend, they also accepted. So they belonged, they had sense of belonging. And then we continued with that participatory thing by giving them that boundary of plot, but they were best artisans to do a mud houses, that traditional Bhungas. And we found a lot of value in continuing that. One additional advantage apart from climate and culture, I'll tell you soon, was economic. That people had visited their places, and right from 64 architects and foreign visitors' signature we can find in their diary that they went there to visit them. And that was also one of the convincing factor, from that apartment of concrete and Sisoti planning to what their vernacular form was. But anyways, so we gave each one that they would build their own house. The material was created by using the local soil, but with the manually pressed scientific ram, so that 10 young men of the settlement, they could earn livelihood for doing that, and they could create 300 block each, so 3000 block by 10 people. So, and that was used by each house owner to lay within that plot their circular, which is called Bhunga huts, and square, which is called chalky. So two circular and one square is rectilinear, is how each house was given the material and the resource for. And each one did it in their own way. They were involved doing their own house, so they would do the best they can. They were learning a livelihood of each bhunga, which was 21,000, of which 3,000 was their labor, which they were earning to do their own house. And youngest of the family participated in some way by learning from the oldest who knew how to do this traditional construction. So that is how even the knowledge got transferred to third generation at least. Coming two generation know how to do it. So these were all the advantages. And in exactly 2.5 months' time, including a break for a wedding in the neighborhood, they could come up with this entire settlement, which 75 rupee a square foot construction cost, where the government stipulated cost was 350 rupees. So one-fifth the cost. And with internal decor and the association, symbols, colors, mud and mirror interiors, etc. And that was the reason people used to go there and watch it. And as I was saying, even right now, there is a government of Gujarat's kind of initiative to what they call Sharadotsav, start a kind of a winter festival to go to Kutch, the region where this happened, and you have a white salt desert, you have camel safaris, you have all these cultural kind of neighborhoods, and they give you a kind of a 3-day package to travel. What is happening is that those tourists, one of the stop is to come to this settlement, look these people in their own habitat, and these people are very expert in very beautiful embroidery work, some of the woodwork, etc. And now they offer homestay because people rather than hotel may like to stay in these kind of vernacular homes with beautiful interiors, etc. And they also buy product from there. These women don't know English, but all tourists, they manage to negotiate and sell their products there. So the footfall has increased, and as a result, their economic gain has been quite substantial. And this project we had won the United Nations citation for. And after 10 years, we were asked to revisit because they were writing a chapter of on disaster rehabilitation approaches. And even if there was a mistake or a lesson learned, and we went there, revisited, I recently visited, and we found that they've not only kept these, they've added more like these. So from Sisoti and concrete, they've continued to kind of go on. No, and amazing by the maintaining culture and yet kind of coming up with new. So coming talking of new, not only those traditional methods were kept, so environmentally and that economically they were manageable, but they did not have door-to-door sanitation earlier. So we introduced every house in their own compound, the sanitation, so that now women don't have to go out, etc., etc. And they adapted overnight. We even had one room with solar PV cell. So that also kind of meant, at least in a decentralized way, some kind of electricity possibility till the actual grid comes in there. And third, we could kind of, I mean, from where the soil was dredged to make the block became a natural reservoir with only 3-inch rainfall in the desert, and it became a talab. And every time post monsoon, it really gets full. And because of that, at their own initiative, they started cultivation. So agriculture in the desert. So this is how the whole ecology changed of the place. So, and then the NGO also got the designer to work with them using their skill and traditional craft, but giving it a little contemporary kind of application form. And this is how this could be marketed all along. So tradition could be retained, contemporary comforts could be brought in, environmentally the ecology could be totally transformed from desert and drought to the agricultural field, and their individual comfort level with electricity block each, so 3,000 block by 10 people. So and that was used by each house owner to lay within that plot their circular, which is called Bhunga huts, and square, which is called chowkis. So two circular and one square is rectilinear, is how each house was given the material and the resource for. And each one did it in their own way. They were involved doing their own house, so they would do the best they can. They were learning a livelihood of each bhunga, which was 21,000, of which 3,000 was their labor, which they were earning to do their own house. And youngest of the family participated in some way by learning from the oldest who knew how to do this traditional construction. So that is how even the knowledge got transferred to third generation, at least coming two generation know how to do it. So these were all the advantages. And in exactly 2.5 months' time, including a break for a wedding in the neighborhood, they could come up with this entire settlement, which 75 rupee a square foot construction cost, where the government stipulated cost was 350 rupees. So one-fifth the cost. And with internal decor and the association, symbols, colors, mud and mirror interiors, etc., And that was the reason people used to go there and watch it. And as I was saying, even right now, I would just end with three things. One popular one, I wouldn't mind repeating it again next time. But three things to take away, or four things. One, base your development philosophy or idea on two fundamental principles: human to human symbiosis and human to nature symbiosis. Second, in context of India, inspire from yesterday and yet aspire for tomorrow. So anchor in the past, dream of the future, and understand the realities of the present. Third is that with our kind of a design intervention, we can definitely improve the quality of life, and that should be the goal. So we can make a difference, but with that goal, we get the right direction. And finally, probably to do that, we might, rather than giving Gandhian currency the value, might perhaps make Gandhian value the currency. So with this change of the idiom, we might be able to achieve, make this planet a great place to live in. Thank you.